What's up, everyone? Welcome to another kindness news update. Another week has gone by, which means we have another week's worth of kindness stories to share with you. So let's get right into it. Once again, I'm Jared Hoyer, and this is your Feel Good News. So, as always, we'll begin by recapping my past week of kindness, which began bright and early Monday morning on the drive to work, when I let someone ahead of me in traffic. Now, a lot of you out there are probably thinking, is this really an act of kindness? Could you be doing more? But again, I want to stress that those small acts of kindness are just as important as the large ones because they can spread and ripple to be larger than we ever thought possible. I also want to stress that to me, kindness is about being better and better with each day. So as someone who personally hates traffic with a burning passion and hates letting people in front of me in traffic, I felt this act was not only a nice gesture, but good self-improvement on my part. Moving on to Tuesday, after our final lesson in our group dance class that we've been doing for the past 8 or 9 weeks, we had one student who wanted to ask the instructor about prices and packages available to continue her dancing. Now, the instructor was busy helping someone else at the time, but I've done quite a bit of research in this area as I'm getting back into dancing as a hobby, so I was able to pull her aside and answer all of her questions so she didn't have to wait for that dance instructor to be available again. Moving on to Wednesday, I did one of my favorite things ever, and I volunteered. I took 30 minutes out of my workday to go down to the lobby of our building and volunteer with the United Way to make and package sandwiches for the less fortunate. On Thursday, after returning home from work, I noticed that someone was struggling to get into the front door of our apartment building. It looked like they were jumping back and forth between the front door and the call box trying to call someone to let them in. So I opened the door to see if I could help them, and it turns out this was a prospective new resident looking to get into the leasing office to ask some questions about the building. But the code in the call box for the leasing office wasn't working. So they were obviously very frustrated, but I was able to let them in, and they were very relieved, and finally they were able to get in and ask their questions about the building. Moving on to Friday, on my way up to visit some friends in Wisconsin, I stopped to get gas, and I struck up a conversation with the person at the pump next to me. We were both heading up to the lake, clearly, because they had 2 jet skis in a trailer attached to their car. I mentioned that those were very nice jet skis and started to ask them about where they got them and how long they've had them. Starting a conversation at the gas pump, in my mind, is pretty similar to starting one in an elevator. A lot of people avoid it because, again, you're in that space for a very small period of time and everyone around you is a stranger most of the time. But these are still opportunities, and even those small conversations, like I said, can mean the world to someone if they're having a bad day, or you never know what relationship you might spark up. So I always encourage people to talk to people in elevators, talk to people at gas stations, embrace those shorter, awkward social situations that we tend to avoid. Now, as I said, my weekend involved being in Wisconsin on a lake with some friends. It was a beautiful weekend and a very fun time, and I really enjoyed seeing everyone. Part of our festivities involved going to dinner Saturday night at a little mom and pop restaurant that didn't do separate checks. So, to avoid arguing about who was going to take the whole check and who was going to pay who back, I volunteered to put the whole check on my credit card and just have people pay me back later. Now, that weekend ended on Sunday as we were all wrapping up and getting ready to go our separate ways. And our friend Ben realized that he had lost his sunglasses in the festivities of the weekend. Luckily, I had a spare set in my car, and I was able to lend those to him so that he could have some protection during his drive back. I also told him that he didn't have to worry about getting them back to me because I'd gotten them for free, so I didn't really care. They were my extra pair, and I was happy to lend them to him. Now let's move on to our national headlines and stories that made news recently. We're going to start with a story out of Niles, Michigan. This story is about Wayne Wilson, a Vietnam veteran who recently passed away on May 28th. And at the time of his death, he had no living relatives left. So, because of this, his friends decided to put a post out to their community encouraging people to attend and pay their respects. Now, when they did this, they expected about 10 to 15 people to show up because of this post, which is why they were amazed when they pulled up the day of and saw 3,000 people waiting to honor Wayne and all he's done for our country. Now, what's really cool about this story is that most of these people were locals, but others had driven up from places as far as Tennessee, Iowa, Florida, and Indiana, all to pay their respects to a hero they had never even met before. I can't think of a more perfect way to honor Wayne Wilson and all he's done for our country as he was buried with full military honors in front of this enormous crowd. Moving on now to our second story. Now, all of these stories are really cool to see and hear about, but in my opinion, they're even cooler when they involve the younger generation. And that's what this next story centers around, as 3 teens in Fonthill, Ontario were recently walking home from a swim late at night when they saw a car on the side of the road with smoke billowing out of its hood. Now, all 3 of these boys were car enthusiasts, so they walked over to the vehicle and offered whatever assistance that they could. The female driver let them look under the hood, and they informed her that she probably needed an entirely new engine and recommended she not try to start it at all or fix it at all, but rather just have it towed back to her house. This woman was visibly upset and said that she couldn't afford a tow. So rather than leave her on the side of the road there to figure out the problem for herself, the boys went way above and beyond the call of duty as they, I kid you not, pushed her car home for her. It took just over 2 hours to cover the 4 miles, a majority of which was uphill, and the entire time, the boys just kept laughing and joking about how much they appreciated the really good workout they were getting that night. Now, the best part to me about this story is that when the boys were asked about it later, they said they weren't doing this to get free handouts. They did it because if they were stranded and broken down on the side of the road, they would want someone to stop and help them. So it's a really good example of that golden rule that we all were preached growing up as kids. And it sounds simple, but that's because it is. Treat others the way you want to be treated. These boys took that above and beyond. I'm not saying you have to push someone's car 4 miles to help them. That's above and beyond the call of duty, and major props to these 3 boys for doing that. But just stopping to see what assistance you can give can make all the difference in the world and can really help someone out of a jam. So again, major props to these boys. This is an incredible story. These boys are all clearly going to go on to be very, very successful in life. Our final story is a story of a gift that keeps on giving even 15 years later. Dale Schrader was a carpenter from Iowa. He spent 67 years of his life working as a carpenter, and he was very frugal. He never got married, he never had any kids, he never owned even more than 2 pairs of jeans. This was just how he chose to live his life. But because of these patterns, he came to realize come retirement that he had quite a bit of money stashed away in the bank, just shy of $3 million. Dale decided he wanted to take that money and do something special for his community. He decided to take that money and offer free rides to college for Iowa kids who had the grades for it but couldn't afford the financial burden. Now, Dale passed away in 2005, but since then, 33 kids from Iowa have been able to go to college because of the scholarship program he started with that money. And recently, all 33 of these people got together to honor Dale's memory and what he did for them. They all sat at a table with Dale's old lunchbox there as if to represent him, and shared their stories of where they are now and what they've been able to do because of Dale's gift to them. While Dale never had any children of his own, these 33 strangers all proudly refer to themselves as Dale's kids. Finally, we'll wrap up this video, as always, by talking about some creative and fun ideas for acts of kindness for you to perform this coming week. We have a lot of family holidays coming up this week, which is really cool. Wednesday is National Cousins Day, Friday is National Aunts and Uncles Day, and Sunday is National Parents Day. So be sure to take the appropriate time this week, reach out to your family, tell them you miss them, tell them you love them. I also want to take a moment to highlight this Friday. This will be the last Friday in July, which is crazy to think about. But we have 2 national holidays going on that Friday. It will be National Talk in an Elevator Day, which, as I talked about earlier in this video, I always encourage. You never know what relationship or connection you might spark up in an elevator. Friday will also be National System Administrator Appreciation Day. So if you have a system administrator in your life, be sure to always thank them for everything that they do. That's everything I have for you this week. Thank you again for watching. It's been another great week. I look forward to bringing you another video next week. Until then, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, follow me on Instagram and Facebook, and again, be sure to send those kindness stories to my email. I'd love to read them, and I'd be more than happy to share them on this video. I'll see you all again next week. Until then, I'm Jared Hoyer, reminding you to pay it forward.